Do you want to be best web developer of 2021? In this video, we'll go over the basic setup and configuration of Visual Studio Code. What's up YouTube? This video is intended for beginners. I'm assuming you have zero knowledge of code writing. So if you are just getting started, you are at right place. The first step to writing code is picking up a good code writing application. There's a ton of them out there, like Notepad, Sublime Text, Atom, and my favorite, Visual Studio Code. Not to be confused with Visual Studio Code, VS Code is a free open source application. It has great support from the community and tons of extensions. The other ones out there are fine, there's nothing wrong with them, but this Visual Studio Code is my preference. In this tutorial, we'll go through how to set up VS Code for web development. I will walk you step by step through the installation and configuration, and we'll look at some extensions that will make your life easier. So first step is to install VS Code. We will save Visual Studio Code as VS Code 2. It is a short form. Go to code.visualstudio.com/download. This is a cross-platform application, so it works on Windows, Linux, and macOS. Go ahead and download the appropriate version and begin the installation. You can read its startup guide, getting started guide, or whatever you call it. It will give you some specification or some story about the application, that what application do and how it works. It will help you get through it. When you get to the selection, select additional task after running this program. I would recommend you checking everything. This is just fully integrates VS Code into your operating system. You may or may not be see these options if you are on Linux or macOS. Just follow my steps and do the same what I am doing. Check out all these options. Once the installation is complete, you can see your VS Code as the same on my screen. VS Code can be used for many different programming languages like Java, C++, .NET, and obviously web development. For now, we are going to focus on basic web development, which includes HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So we are going to set it up for that. Let's have a quick tour. On the left side we have the sidebar and the top is the Explorer. This is where you will find all your object files and directories when you have opened a project folder. Next is search. It's pretty self-explanatory, but this will allow you to search within your project files, and there is a find and replace functionality too. Next is source control. Here you can integrate Git, but that's beyond the scope of this tutorial, so we'll cover Git in its own video later. And next is debug. Again, this is beyond the scope of the tutorial, but VS Code has great debugging capabilities. And next we have extensions. We'll talk more about extensions in a minute. At the bottom there's the manage call, and in this menu are settings, keyboard, shortcuts, and themes. At the top we see command palette. Command palette is a really cool feature. You can also get it too by pressing Ctrl or Command Shift P. and here you can search for just about anything. So if you want to open a file or change a theme or check out the keyboard shortcuts, and you don't have to complete a word, then you can type words together and it figures out what you are looking for. It's really cool, it saves a lot of time. So let's check out the keyboard shortcuts. There are a ton of shortcuts and you can customize them. Just increase the font color to 22 as it will help you to read more, and it will also help me to make you more understandable. And also put 2, like 4 is very good, but use 2 so that you have 2 screens for the coding, so that not all your codes go to the right and became invisible. And also check out this, it will help you to do the same. So there are few built-in themes and I will preview each one for you quickly. So some of these are just ridiculous in my opinion, and there are a ton of additional themes that you can search through and download. A popular one is called Material Dark, but I actually prefer the default dark theme. So I'll stick to that one. Let's move on to extension. So in the sidebar you go to extension, and the first that I would recommend is called Live Server. This one is really popular with over 4.5 million downloads. What this extension does is it sets up a local web server so that you can see the changes made in real time without having to reload. It's a must-have for web development. The next extension is Bootstrap 4 and for DOSM snippets. Bootstrap is a CSS framework, and basically think of it as a template. This extension will help you to build websites based on Bootstrap, and I will have a dedicated video for Bootstrap later. The next extension is JavaScript. JavaScript is a programming language that spans front-end and back-end development. In web development, JavaScript is key. You will be writing a lot of it. These snippets will be helpful. Now let's look at some basic functionality of VS Code. I'm going to go to the Explorer and open a folder. I have created a project folder for the purposes of this video. Now that we have our project folder open, I am going to add our first file and name it index.html. VS Code has something called Emmet. Think of Emmet as shorthand. With it you can easily write a lot of code quickly. Here I will demonstrate creating an HTML page. You can do this by pressing exclamation mark and you will see that Emmet has popped up as a suggestion. Now hit enter. There you have it, a basic blank HTML web page, ready to go. Easy now again. I know you are just beginning and you probably have no clue what all this, but I am just demonstrating the capabilities of VS Code. You don't have to know what any of this means. We'll get into that actual code in the next video. Other things we can do is the type division, then hit enter, and then this creates a division tab for us. Div tab, yeah. I can quickly create a list by typing UL. Enter, then li4, enter. I could just type .class name and that will create a div tab with the class of class name. I can type into hashtag foo.bar and that will create a next input with the ID of foo and the class of bar. So basically li*4 means li multiplied by 4, that means that list of 4 contents. This is a built-in feature of VS Code that suggests options and helps you to complete your code. To show your mode of intelligence, I will manually create an input and define the tab. When I create the parentness, intelligence gives me all the valid input types to choose from. Another feature is auto close tags. So if I type left angle bracket type right angle bracket, it will automatically create my closing tag. So that's the basic of VS Code. We will go more in depth in upcoming videos. So if you like the video, then thumbs up and appreciate, and if you want to be notified of videos, hit subscribe button and press the bell icon.